Why is Overwatch 2 taking so long? For a game announced in 2019 that has already been in development for a year prior to that, we sure as heck are spending a lot of time waiting for it, and that waiting won't be over anytime soon in light of the most recent news of a delay. So for today's video, I decided to collect all the information we have about the sequel so far and condense it in a nice digestible package for your viewing pleasure. I actually think there are a lot of details that kind of fell under the table because we're too busy gloating about the fact that we still don't have a release date. But to kick things off, let's talk about what you do and don't get for your money come launch. There are two parts to the upcoming sequel, Overwatch 2 the product and Overwatch 2 the update. This has caused a lot of confusion back in 2019, so I just want to make sure we are on the same page about this. Overwatch 2 the update is Blizzard moving Overwatch 1 into the next generation. The new game mode, the new heroes, and the new maps are all coming to existing owners of Overwatch 1, and you will not have to pay a cent for it if you already own the first game. Overwatch 2 the product is all the new stuff that does not relate to the core PvP gameplay. So that includes the story campaign, the repeatable PvE co-op missions, and all the things that come with it. If you don't already own Overwatch 1, then buying the sequel obviously gives you access to both the update as well as the product. But regardless of our inability to buy the game, the delay did not affect Blizzard's decision to let the next season of the Overwatch League play on an early build of Overwatch 2. At this point, I'm convinced that Activision Blizzard is more desperate for you to watch OWL than I'm for you to hit the like button. No, seriously, I really need you to hit the like button. Anyway, now that you know what you pay for, let's get into the nitty-gritty details of what all these things entail, starting with 5v5. Now, Overwatch 1 has come a long way in its core PvP gameplay, starting off with absolutely no hero limit, allowing you to choose as many of the same character as you like. The developers have adjusted the rule set to accommodate how players in large want to play the game. From a 1 per hero limit to the 2-2-2 rule set, Overwatch today plays nothing like it did back in 2016. And Overwatch 2, once again, is aiming to reimagine how we play the game. When the sequel launches, Overwatch is going to move away from the main tank off tank synergy in favor of only having one tank per team. The developers are citing many reasons for why they decided to do that, not the least of which is readability of the battlefields. The devs are aiming to simplify combat in order to make it easier to read. That is very understandable in light of the fact that the special effects cluster that occurs once multiple players use their ultimates makes it generally hard to understand what is happening, even for seasoned players. Additionally, Blizzard felt like combining not only tank ultimates but general tank abilities could often feel too oppressive and simply not fun to play against, as is evident thanks to many different metas throughout the game's lifespan, including the notorious double shield meta. Stacking tanks has been an issue almost as long as Overwatch has been around, so the developers are trying to shift more power and utility to individual tanks at the cost of, well, having a second one on the team. As stated by the developers, during internal testing they found that this change in structure allowed for more individual player impact, not only from tanks but from every role in the game. To quote Aaron Keller, current game director for Overwatch 2, "Love or hate 5v5, we are committed to keeping the PvP of Overwatch as competitive as possible, and we are putting many resources into it," quote end. Tank players who are concerned with the future of their role will find a selection of characters who can achieve much more on their own than in the current state of the game. Reinhardt gets to cancel his charge at will, Winston gets an alternative fire to use over range, and Zarya gets a shared pool of bubble chargers that she can use either on herself or on her teammates. While these things are subject to change, it shows that Blizzard is trying to allow for more player agency, especially in the tank role, who is known to rarely get to do more than holding up their barriers. Another set of changes that's aiming to give more power into the hands of individual players rather than relying on team synergy are role passives. Support heroes are going to get out of combat self-healing, DPS heroes get increased movement speed, and tank heroes get knockback resistance and generate less ultimate charge when attacked. The developers are trying to incentivize more aggressive playstyles that could lead to the aforementioned increase in carry potential. A support player no longer has to rely on their second support to top them off, and instead they can use their cooldowns aggressively rather than defensively. Tanks no longer have to worry about an aggressive approach to their gameplay inadvertently feeding into the opposing team's ultimate bank, because now they generate less ultimate charge when deciding to go on the offensive. And DPS players get a slight edge in mobility to allow them to chase down their foes when otherwise they could simply slip away. With that said, there will also be a bit of a redistribution of power across different roles in the game. At present, the developers are trying to move a lot of their crowd control abilities away from the DPS roster. Cole Cassidy, formerly known as McCree, is currently set to lose his signature flashbang in favor of an undisclosed alternative. And Mei is no longer going to be able to freeze other players solid, instead dealing more damage and only slowing them down. While the support roster does not have a massive selection of stuns, the developers did say that they were fine with Ana keeping her sleep dart. Needless to say that most heroes are going to see changes to fit into the 5v5 framework, but I don't want to get too much in detail about abilities and how they will change because because while the developers gave us a sneak peek at some of them, a lot of that stuff is more likely to change than just the broad philosophy that they try to apply to the game overall. And a fundamental aspect of the design principles of Overwatch 2 revolve around a return to more basic FPS gameplay. Removing one of two tanks is certainly part of that, but the map design is also hugely affected by that philosophy. Obviously, Overwatch 2 is going to come with a set of new maps for every single game mode, including its new game mode Push. But while we are getting a new game mode, one of them is actually going to get removed. The control game mode, otherwise known as 2CP, has been one of the most complained about game modes in Overwatch, to the point where two especially egregious maps, Horizon Lunar Colony and Paris, have been removed from the competitive rotation some odd years ago. It is reasonable to assume that the removal of 2CP only pertains to the competitive mode, seeing as how even Paris and HLC are still available in the custom games browser as well as quick play. But I couldn't find confirmation on whether or not these maps are actually getting completely deleted. It is interesting to note that 2CP and Push are actually directly correlated. According to the developers, redesigning the 2CP game mode was such a huge diversion of development resources that they figured their time was better spent just making new ones. The notable part about the new maps is that they were designed with 5v5 in mind. Knowing that you don't have two tanks to hide behind, the maps are built with a lot of natural cover players can use. The developers have also learned a lot of lessons from what did and did not work in the original game. The new maps are built with a lot more flanking routes and different high ground sections to fight over. I think anyone who plays Overwatch today understands the issue of trying to push into an objective when your only passage is a choke point. Turns out that is not very fun, so the developers are making sure to add more options for players to solve these kinds of problems. This has actually led to the new maps feeling a lot bigger than the old ones, but the devs have confirmed that apparently they are very similar in size. They just have a lot more detail in them, which was only made possible thanks to their new and improved engine. And that engine improvement is a big deal for Overwatch 2, because not only does it allow the devs to add more details to maps without sacrificing performance, but they can actually just make them flat out bigger. For the co-op aspect of the game, the repeatable hero missions are going to take place all across the world. While that does include all the maps that we know and love, Blizzard is actually adding new sections to old maps that we have never seen before. The addition of a day-night cycle might not sound very impressive, but a dynamic weather system just might, because while it is cool to see your favorite maps under different weather conditions, it actually has very real implications to your gameplay. Since hero missions can take place anywhere under a variety of weather conditions, visibility starts becoming a concern. It can affect what character you want to bring to that mission to make sure you succeed, giving value to abilities that add utility rather than plain damage. And when it comes to the PvE, I feel like they could warrant a video of its own, but because we have more things to talk about, let me breeze through that section. Next to the day-night cycle, the dynamic weather system, and the new sections added onto old maps, the developers have also created talent trees for each individual hero to create meaningful build diversity. They have created a whole host of unique AI enemies to fight against, and even developed collision technology to play into your combo potential to take out more than one enemy at a time. There are different mission types within the repeatable hero missions that, just like hero abilities, I'm sure are subject to change, which is why I don't want to get too much in detail about it here. On the story campaign side of things, you will only have access to a limited number of heroes per mission, which are dictated by the story beats of each individual mission. The developers did say that there will be more than 4 available heroes per mission, and what heroes you choose has an impact on the things that your characters say. There's a branching dialogue system that responds to your hero choices, and every single story campaign mission has an intro and outro cinematic, much akin to the cinematic shorts we know and love. The campaign is also going to have key set-piece moments for which the developers had to build the technology from the ground up. Turns out a PvP-only game does not need all that fancy animation and event logic, but for the sequel it was definitely necessary to build the tech for it. The engine updates improve lighting and shadows amongst other things, but associate art director Dean Rogers cited that the engine team tried not only to make the game look better, but also to improve the workflow for the art team going forward. He also confirmed that Overwatch 1 owners will benefit from these engine improvements, as even the older skins in the game should look better. When asked whether or not the developers are planning to add more in-depth customization like mixing and matching character and weapon skins, was unfortunately not confirmed nor denied, simply telling us to wait and see. Now, it is a bit hard to find out which parts of the game direly needed the new engine to be able to come to fruition. Blizzard has cited the map improvements and character visuals to benefit from it specifically, but it is a bit unclear if a lot of the technology they are building for the PvE side of the game required an upgraded engine to function or not. On that same coin, they've also made improvements to the audio in the game, which I could not find confirmation on whether or not these would be possible in the current current version of the game. But other than recording entirely new sounds for the weapons, which the community has given very mixed feedback on, they've also overhauled the way the sounds react relative to the environment. That actually has major gameplay ramifications for the PvP side of the game. To date, when you hear gunshots in Overwatch, you cannot tell whether they come from an interior space or not. But in Overwatch 2, the sound your gun makes is going to vary depending on the environment you are in, which means that you get more information on an enemy player's location without even having to see them. A word they really like to use during their presentation was visceral, when they explained how they treat gunplay through sounds and camera shakes to make it feel as responsive and, well, as visceral as possible. Between the engine improvements, new technology, audio, visuals, and gameplay fundamentals, it is easy to see why Blizzard sees Overwatch 2 as a chance to reset. A lot of these changes go so deep that you couldn't possibly have achieved them with a simple update, at least according to them. The addition of PvE aspects not only fulfill a long-demanded desire of the community who were asking for more story content for years, but it is also an attempt for Overwatch 2 to become the Overwatch for all of my friends, as described during the BlizzCon Online 2021 behind-the-scenes opening. Former game director Jeff Kaplan firmly believed in smaller development teams creating a better work environment, but ever since he has left, Blizzard began adapting to the ever-changing landscape of the video games industry. In 2021 and beyond, you cannot keep your live service game relevant by only occasionally updating it, and it seems like they finally realized that. To cite current game director Aaron Keller once more, when we shipped Overwatch 1, we were around 60 to 70 people, and the team has continued to grow from there. I don't think we had quite 200 yet, but we just keep growing because the game we are making now, Overwatch 2, is a much bigger game than the original one. Quote end. Expanding the size of the team is no simple task, especially in the wake of changing leadership and a global pandemic. Adding to that all the improvements to the core gameplay they make, as well as all the fundamentally new content and tech that has to be built from the ground up, I start to see why the sequel is taking so long. And since this is their attempt at a reset, in which they want to create a game that appeals to everyone, yeah, they're definitely gonna want to make sure it lands just right. But this is it for me here today, as I cover all the things we know about Overwatch 2 so far. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, then feel free to sound off in the comment section below and maybe share it with a friend. If you're still playing Overwatch 1 today, then I got a whole playlist of story content linked below for you to indulge in, which I narrate all the crazy things that can happen in this game. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to drop me a like on your way if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and definitely ring that bell icon to not miss out on my next upload. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and until next time, peace!